A tiny black girl walks into a bank, carrying nothing but a small bag and a quiet confidence. The staff laugh at her, whisper about her, assume her account is empty. But when the screen lights up, their world changes forever. She belongs to one of the wealthiest families in the country. And today, she proves that appearances can be deadly deceiving. It was a quiet Saturday morning in downtown Atlanta. The streets were unusually calm, the sunlight glinting off the tall glass buildings and polished sidewalks. People hurried past with briefcases and shopping bags, their faces focused on errands, appointments, or weekend plans. In the midst of them, a small figure moved with surprising purpose. A little black girl no taller than 4 feet stepped carefully onto the bank's entrance steps. Her dress was plain, soft pink with tiny embroidered flowers along the hem. Her hair was tied neatly into 2 buns, secured with simple black ribbons. She carried a small, worn-out bag, one that looked like it belonged in a school rather than a bank. Despite her small size, she walked as if she owned the sidewalk. Passers-by barely noticed her. To them, she was just a child wandering in the adult world, an ordinary presence in the busy streets. But there was something in the way she held herself. Her shoulders straight, her chin slightly raised, her eyes scanning the building ahead, that suggested she was no ordinary child. Inside, the bank was alive with quiet energy. The polished marble floors reflected the sunlight streaming in from the tall windows. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cleaning polish, and the soft hum of computers and printers filled the space. People moved in a rhythm that only banks seemed to have. Adults spoke in muted tones to tellers, fingers tapping impatiently on counters, pen scribbling signatures, papers shuffled in neat stacks. The little girl walked straight to the teller counters, her eyes calm, observing everything with careful attention. She stopped in front of the first counter. The teller, a man in his 40s with a well-groomed mustache, looked down at her. He raised an eyebrow and smiled politely, assuming she was lost or here for a parent. "Can I help you, little one?" he asked, his voice kind but slightly amused. The girl looked up, her eyes steady and piercing, with a focus that seemed older than her age. "I want to check my account," she said simply. No hesitation, no faltering. Her voice was soft, but carried an authority that made the teller pause. He chuckled lightly, glancing at his colleagues. Some whispered quietly to each other. Others smiled, thinking it was a funny moment, a child trying to do something meant for adults. "You are very young to have a bank account," he said. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes," she replied, her small lips pressed together. But there was confidence in her tone. "I want to see my balance." The teller laughed under his breath and shook his head, assuming it would be a small, empty account. He typed her details slowly into the computer, expecting to see a number so small it would confirm his assumptions. Around him, staff members whispered to each other, trying not to appear too curious. But every eye in the room was subtly drawn toward the little girl. She had a presence that could not be ignored. She placed her tiny hands neatly on the counter, standing still, waiting patiently. She did not fidget. She did not look nervous. Her calm, collected demeanor contrasted sharply with the whispers and quiet laughter of the adults around her. Everyone assumed this was going to be a simple, mundane interaction. Nobody was ready for what was about to happen. The teller stared at the computer screen. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, frozen in disbelief. He expected a small number, maybe a few $100s. But the balance that appeared was unimaginable. Millions. Every digit precise, undeniable. He blinked, leaned closer, and then blinked again. His heart skipped a beat. Around him, staff members leaned in subtly, whispering to each other. Some gasped softly, others exchanged startled glances. A young teller dropped her pen on the polished marble floor. The metallic clatter echoed, drawing a few curious looks from nearby customers. The little girl remained calm. She stood perfectly still, her small hands folded neatly on the counter, her eyes fixed on the teller, her lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that suggested she had expected this reaction all along. I think there must be a mistake," the teller stammered. "Millions in your account? How is this possible?" The girl tilted her head slightly, a small, confident smile still on her lips. "It is not a mistake," she said softly. "My family has always taken care of me." The bank manager, a tall man in a crisp navy suit, stepped forward. "Is this correct?" he asked, peering over the teller's shoulder. Yes, sir, the teller replied, still staring at the screen in disbelief. The little girl slowly opened her bag, revealing a small leather pouch. Inside were neatly arranged envelopes, each labeled carefully, clearly organized by someone who understood money and responsibility. The staff exchanged astonished glances. They realized she was not just a child with a bank account. She was managing millions with care and precision. One older teller whispered under his breath, "She looks like any ordinary child, so plain. How could she possibly belong to a millionaire family?" The girl's smile remained, calm and serene, as if the world's disbelief had no effect on her. In that moment, she was no longer a little girl at a bank. She had become a figure of intrigue, mystery, and undeniable power. By now, whispers had spread across the entire bank. Customers noticed the unusual attention. Some stole glances at the girl, curiosity and astonishment written across their faces. The tellers tried to maintain professionalism, but their amazement was hard to hide. The bank manager stepped closer, adjusting his glasses. "Young lady, may I ask, where do you live?" he asked gently. The girl paused, considering the question. Then she replied, "In a very big house, but you do not need to know where." Her voice was polite, calm, yet firm. There was no hesitation, no fear, just confidence. The manager's eyebrows rose. He glanced at the staff, all of whom were now staring at her with a mixture of disbelief and respect. One teller whispered, "She looks ordinary, plain, nothing flashy, but she has more money than anyone here will ever see in their lifetime." The little girl opened her bag again, revealing a small notebook, neatly labeled, with columns of figures and careful notes. It was clear she understood responsibility, planning and order far beyond her age. The air in the bank was thick with tension. People could not stop staring. They had underestimated her, assumed she was just a child. Now the truth was undeniable. A tiny figure had walked into their world and turned it upside down. Even the customers waiting in line were intrigued. Some whispered to each other, others tried to peek at the screen. Everyone sensed that something extraordinary was happening, yet nobody knew the full story. The little girl waited patiently, letting the reality of her presence sink in. She was small, plain, unassuming. But the reaction she elicited made it clear that appearances could be deceiving. And at that moment, she had captured the attention of every person in the room, without saying a single boastful word. The little girl stood quietly at the counter, her small hands resting neatly on the polished surface. The bank staff still whispered among themselves, trying to process the unimaginable balance that appeared on the screen. Customers in line stole occasional glances, curiosity and disbelief evident in their expressions. Yet no one dared ask the questions that everyone wanted answered. The bank manager cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Young lady," he said gently, "how is it possible that someone your age has access to this much money?" The girl looked up at him, her dark eyes steady and intelligent. "My family," she said slowly, "has always planned for the future. I am the youngest, but I am taught to understand money, to respect it, to manage it." Her words were simple, yet they carried weight far beyond her years. The staff exchanged nervous glances. They had expected to laugh at a child checking her account. Instead, they were confronted with poise, knowledge, and authority in someone so small. A female teller leaned slightly closer, curiosity getting the better of her. "What does your family do?" she asked quietly. "How did you come to have an account like this?" The girl hesitated for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "My parents and my grandparents built our family carefully," she said. "They worked in businesses many people never notice, investments, property, companies that move quietly, but they always grow. They prepared me to be ready for the world, even at my age." The staff whispered again, astonished. One older teller muttered, "She looks like a child from an ordinary neighborhood. Plain dress, simple bag. Nobody could imagine she belongs to a family like that." The girl reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo. A snapshot of a grand estate with wide gardens, fountains, and tall columns. The photo was old, but carefully kept. She handed it to the teller nearest her. "This is where I live," she said. "But that is not important. What matters is that I understand responsibility." The teller held the photo, stunned. The estate looked like something out of a movie, a mansion that spoke of wealth, legacy, and power. The other staff members leaned in, whispering urgently to one another, trying to process what they were seeing. A customer in line finally spoke up, eyes wide. Is that her home? That's unbelievable." The little girl smiled faintly. She knew the effect her words and small actions had on everyone around her. She had come to the bank not to impress anyone, not to boast, but to learn and verify her own account. Yet the reactions around her revealed the hidden truth. Society underestimated children, underestimated appearances, and underestimated people who seemed ordinary at first glance. For the first time, the room was silent. Not a whisper, not a laugh, not even a shuffle of papers. Everyone waited, sensing there was more to this child than anyone could imagine. And indeed, the little girl was just beginning to reveal the story that would shock the bank, staff, and everyone watching. The bank had fallen into an unusual silence. The whispers that had filled the room moments before were replaced by wide-eyed stares. Every teller, every customer, every observer in the bank seemed frozen in disbelief. A little girl, so small, so unassuming, had not only walked in and requested her balance, but had also revealed an account worth millions, and she had done it calmly, confidently, without a single hint of fear. The tellers leaned closer to the computer screens, double-checking the numbers, unable to believe what they were seeing. "This cannot be right," muttered one young teller under her breath. "It has to be a system error. No child can have this much money." The girl remained patient, quietly observing the reactions around her. She did not fidget. She did not make a sound. Her calm presence contrasted sharply with the growing tension of the adults around her. It was as if she could see the thoughts running through their minds, and she found it predictable. A middle-aged teller, her brow furrowed, whispered to a colleague, "She doesn't even look wealthy. Plain dress, simple bag. How is this possible?" Her colleague shrugged. "Maybe she's lying. Maybe her family paid someone to make a fake account." The little girl's eyes flickered slightly at the words, sharp and knowing. "I am not lying," she said softly, her voice carrying in the quiet room. "Everything in my account is real. I manage it myself." The staff exchanged nervous glances. They had assumed she was a child with nothing more than a small, empty account. They had whispered. They had laughed quietly. They had judged her based on her appearance alone. Now the realization hit them. They had been wrong. Completely wrong. The bank manager, still towering in his navy suit, cleared his throat. He stepped closer, trying to regain control over the situation. "Young lady," he said carefully, "may I ask, how did you come to have this account? Who authorized it?" The little girl looked up, her eyes steady and unwavering. "My parents," she said simply, "and my grandparents. They prepared me for this. I am the youngest, but I am taught responsibility and management. I check my balance, I plan, I make decisions. That is my duty." The manager paused, impressed despite himself. He adjusted his glasses and looked at the staff. "Everyone, please. Let's maintain professionalism. She is a client like any other. She deserves respect." The tellers nodded, though some still looked shocked. Disbelief etched on their faces. One young man whispered, She's more responsible than most adults here." A customer waiting in line leaned forward slightly. "Excuse me," she said quietly, "is she a millionaire?" The little girl looked at her politely. "My family has always been careful with their money," she replied. "I am fortunate to have this, but it does not change who I am. I am still learning, still responsible, still a child." The room seemed to hold its breath. There was something almost magical about the contrast between her small stature, her simple dress, and the immense power her words conveyed. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. For the first time, the staff realized that they had been quick to judge. They had assumed that appearances told the full story. They had laughed quietly, whispered to each other, and underestimated the little girl. Now the balance on the screen, the neat notebook, the calm demeanor, all of it shattered their assumptions. And while the staff and customers were trying to understand, the little girl quietly smiled to herself. She had achieved exactly what she wanted. She had confirmed her balance, tested the reactions of the people around her, and reminded everyone that appearances could be deceptive. This was only the beginning. The bank's quiet hum had shifted into something more intense. The whispers, the gasps, the stolen glances, all of it created a strange atmosphere. Even the customers in line could sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. And as the little girl stood patiently at the counter, a figure entered the bank. He was a tall man in his late 40s, dressed in a crisp gray suit, with an air of authority that immediately drew attention. His dark sunglasses and polished shoes suggested he was someone accustomed to control. As he stepped forward, the bank staff instinctively straightened. The manager, who had been watching the girl with a mixture of curiosity and caution, approached the man. "Can I help you, sir?" the manager asked politely, though his voice held a hint of caution. The man removed his sunglasses slowly, revealing sharp, observant eyes. He glanced around the room and finally fixed his gaze on the little girl. For a moment, everyone in the bank noticed a subtle tension pass through the air. There was something about this man, something unspoken, that made the staff feel uneasy. The little girl, however, did not flinch. Her eyes met his directly. There was recognition in her gaze, a flicker that was almost imperceptible, but enough to make anyone paying attention notice. She knew him. He knew her. And the presence of this man changed the room entirely. He stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Is this the young lady checking her account?" "Yes," the manager replied. "She is a client, sir." The man's eyes studied the girl for a long moment. "I see," he said quietly. Then he turned slightly, addressing the staff. "Leave her be. She is here on her own, and she knows exactly what she is doing." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. Who was this man? And how did he know that this little girl was capable of managing millions on her own? Their curiosity was growing, mixed with a strange sense of fear and awe. The girl's small hands rested lightly on the counter, her posture perfect, her eyes calm and unafraid. She knew that this man's arrival meant something. Perhaps he was connected to her family. Perhaps he had come to observe, to ensure everything was in order. But her expression betrayed nothing. She was composed, confident, and in control. A teller leaned over and whispered to another, "Do you know who that man is?" The colleague shook her head, voice barely audible. I have no idea. But there's something about him. He knows her and they respect each other." "That's clear." The man finally spoke again, his tone low but carrying authority. "Young lady, I trust everything is in order with your account." The girl nodded. "Yes, sir. I checked everything myself." "It is correct. I manage it responsibly." The man studied her for a long moment, then stepped back, allowing the staff and customers to see the interaction. It was clear that he was satisfied, yet his presence had added a new layer of gravity to the room. The little girl was no ordinary client. She had observers, protectors, and perhaps a legacy behind her that nobody in the bank could begin to understand. The staff could feel the weight of the moment. A small child had not only revealed wealth beyond imagination, but had also brought into the room a figure whose presence demanded respect. They realized slowly that the little girl's story was far more complicated than anyone could have guessed. The little girl stood calmly at the counter, her hands folded neatly, on top of the ledger-like notebook she had pulled from her bag. The whispers in the bank had died down, replaced by a tense silence. Every staff member, every customer, and even the mysterious man in the suit were watching her closely. They did not understand what she was about to do, but instinctively they knew it was important. The teller finally cleared his throat. "Miss, your balance. Everything seems to be in order," he said cautiously. "I mean, it's correct. But how?" He trailed off, unsure of how to express the disbelief everyone felt. The girl's small fingers moved slowly over the leather pouch. She pulled out a few sheets of carefully printed documents, handing them to the manager. "These are my family's financial statements," she said, her voice steady. "They verify my account and the funds." The staff leaned in, eyes wide. The documents were detailed, neat, precise. Each page carried columns of numbers, bank statements, and letters of authorization. It was clear that the child had not only access to millions, but also the knowledge and responsibility to manage them. Then she did something that completely stunned everyone. She took a small, plain key from her bag and placed it on the counter. "This key opens a safety deposit box," she explained. "It contains assets my family wishes to keep secure. I am allowed to access it when necessary." The room went silent. No one had expected a child to come prepared with such foresight. The bank manager's jaw tightened, and even the most skeptical teller felt a shiver of awe. Customers in line leaned forward, straining to see, unable to hide their astonishment. The mysterious man in the suit nodded subtly, a faint smile on his lips. "She's proving what I've always known," he murmured to the manager. "She's ready for more than anyone here can imagine. She handles responsibility with the precision of an adult, yet the intuition of someone far beyond her years." The little girl looked around the room, her gaze calm, almost knowing. "I am not here to boast," she said. "I am here to learn, to verify, and to ensure that everything is correct. That is what my family has taught me." Her words were simple, polite, and deliberate, yet they carried a weight that left the bank staff speechless. They realized finally that this was not a child playing at being important. This was a child who commanded respect without demanding it, who had prepared meticulously for this exact moment. Even the customers who had initially thought her just an ordinary little girl were now whispering among themselves, eyes wide, hearts racing. She had turned the entire room upside down with nothing more than calm confidence, preparation, and quiet intelligence. The bank staff understood the truth. They had underestimated her, and appearances had deceived them entirely. This little girl was not just checking her account. She was showing the world that even the smallest, most unassuming figures could carry the greatest power. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the computers and the occasional shuffle of papers. All eyes were fixed on the little girl. The bank staff, previously whispering and chuckling, now leaned forward in astonishment. Customers peeked from behind their positions, their faces a mixture of disbelief and fascination. The little girl reached slowly into her bag once more. This time, she pulled out a small embossed card. Its golden lettering shimmered under the bank lights. She held it up for everyone to see. "This is my family identification," she said quietly. "It confirms who I am and the ownership of these accounts." The bank manager adjusted his glasses, leaning closer. His brow furrowed. He examined the card carefully. This belongs to the Langston family?" he asked. His voice trembled slightly. "Yes," the girl replied. Her eyes were steady, confident. "We have managed our family assets for generations. I am the youngest, but I am trained to understand the responsibilities that come with this legacy." The teller, who had initially laughed, found his mouth dry. He shook his head, unable to believe it. "Langston! The Langston family?" he muttered under his breath. "The millionaires? The ones who own properties across 3 states. The ones everyone talks about in financial news." The little girl nodded, her small smile calm. "That is correct. I am part of the family. I manage this account personally, and I have full authorization to verify balances and transactions." Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into astonished gasps. Customers who had come to the bank for routine business now gawked in awe. She is one of them?" one woman asked in disbelief. The mysterious man in the suit stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "She is more than one of them," he said quietly but firmly. "She is ready to carry the family legacy. She understands responsibility, wealth, and strategy in a way most adults could never imagine. Today she has shown all of you that appearances deceive, and respect must be earned, not assumed." The little girl placed her notebook gently on the counter and looked around the room. "I am not here to show off," she said, her voice steady and polite. "I am here to learn, to ensure accuracy, and to practice the skills I will need as I grow older. This is my responsibility, and I take it seriously." The bank manager took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. I apologize," he said, finally finding his voice. "We underestimated you. We judged based on looks, and we were wrong." The little girl smiled faintly, accepting the apology without bitterness. She had anticipated this reaction. She had walked into the bank knowing that people would judge, and she had prepared for it. Every step, every document, every envelope had been carefully thought out. The staff's laughter and whispers from earlier were replaced by a respectful silence. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A child had entered their world and completely changed their perspective on wealth, responsibility, and intelligence. For a moment, the room seemed to pause. Even the customers, once distracted by mundane errands, felt the weight of the revelation. They had seen a child, small and plain, command attention, respect, and awe from everyone around her. And in that moment, the little girl, calm, composed, and precise, proved that true power does not come from appearances. It comes from knowledge, preparation, and the courage to stand confidently, no matter what anyone thinks. The Langston legacy had quietly stepped into the bank, embodied in someone no one expected, and the entire room understood, finally, that they had witnessed something rare and unforgettable. The bank was completely silent. Every staff member and customer seemed frozen, still absorbing the revelation of the little girl's true identity. The whispers, chuckles, and skeptical glances that had filled the room just minutes ago were gone. The bank manager straightened, adjusting his tie as he tried to regain composure. I apologize again, he said, voice firm but sincere. We underestimated you. We assumed based on age, appearance, and we were completely wrong. The little girl smiled faintly. It's all right, she said softly. I knew you would. People often judge by appearances. That is why I came prepared. A few tellers stepped closer, their expressions mixed with awe and humility. One young teller said quietly, I've never seen anyone so small handle something so big, with such precision and confidence. Even the customers seemed to understand. One woman whispered to her friend, we judged her, but she's incredible. Everything she did, everything she showed, it was all calm, smart, and deliberate. The mysterious man in the suit nodded approvingly. This is the way to teach respect, he said to the manager. Let people underestimate you, and then prove them wrong through knowledge, responsibility, and poise. She has done exactly that. The little girl picked up her notebook and pouch, straightened her dress, and looked at everyone. I came here today to learn and verify my account. I leave now knowing that lessons are learned in every direction, by both adults and children. A hush fell over the room. The staff, previously confident in their assumptions, now realized the depth of their misjudgment. They had witnessed the power of calm, preparation, and intelligence embodied in someone they never expected. The little girl walked calmly toward the bank doors. Each step was purposeful, as if she had conquered a world no one else could see. The staff watched silently, still trying to process the events of the morning. The manager stepped forward and said gently, Thank you for teaching us something we all needed to learn. The girl nodded politely. Respect and knowledge are earned, not assumed, she replied. Never judge someone by size, age, or appearance. She opened the glass doors and stepped out into the sunlight. The streets were the same as when she arrived, bustling with ordinary life. Yet now, those who had witnessed her visit saw the world differently. A small, unassuming child had walked into their midst and completely upended expectations. The mysterious man in the suit followed quietly, keeping a careful watch. As if the little girl's lesson extended beyond the bank, customers and staff whispered among themselves, still amazed, still processing the fact that they had underestimated someone so young, so seemingly ordinary and yet so extraordinary. The little girl's small figure disappeared down the street, carrying with her not just a balance verified, not just a family legacy, but a lesson that would linger in everyone's minds long after the doors closed. Appearances were deceiving, and power could reside in the most unexpected of forms. And for everyone in that bank, the morning would never be forgotten. They had learned that true capability does not shout. It waits quietly, prepares diligently, and surprises the world when least expected.